Welcome. It is Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz. Ben Ferguson with you. We've got a packed show for you today. And also, I want to remind you that this show we do as a podcast 3 days a week. So make sure that you download Verdict with Ted Cruz wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. The Democratic Party, Senator, is really starting to show their true colors in a proud way. Their disdain for American values, American families, and for God is on full display now. Now, we started to witness some of this when they were going after the Jewish people with the war when Israel was attacked. But Tim Kaine testifies that the constitutional rights come from the government. Let me say that again. Come from the government, not from God. You had a very interesting interaction with him, and this is something that should terrify all Americans because now this is where the Democratic Party truly is, disdain for God and family.
Well, every day the Democrat Party gets more and more radical. They've now decided that God has no place in our nation and God has no place in our founding documents and that our rights, critically, do not come from God. This is truly an extreme position. Tim Kaine and I went back and forth this week in the United States Senate on the foundations of our nation. We're going to get into that. We're also going to get into the threat that Joe Biden and the Democrats' open borders pose to you, even if you don't live in a border state. You may think you live far, far away from the border. Well, 4 years of open borders has endangered every community, every family. Up in New England, just this week, 171 Sinaloa cartel members were arrested. New England is nowhere near the southern border, and yet the Mexican drug cartels have penetrated communities all across the country. We're going to break that down as well.
Yeah, it's really important, and this is a big defining moment, I think, in this country, especially with the Democratic Party, and they're giving us an amazing amount of intel about what their future plans are. Want to tell you real quick about Patriot Mobile. You've got a lot of choices when it comes to cell phone service. There's new ones that pop up all the time, but there is one company that's been doing this for more than 13 years. And with literally more than hundreds of thousands of customers now, they're making a difference standing up for the values that we believe in. Now, when I say they're making a difference, when you're a member of Patriot Mobile, not only do you get amazing nationwide coverage, you get, it's phenomenal service. You get a customer-based team that does everything right here in the U.S. You call the number, you're talking to somebody in this country, and they can set you up in minutes for your new service. Now, you keep your same phone, your same cell phone, or you can upgrade to a new one if you want to, new cell phone number if you want it, or keep your old number. It doesn't matter. They do it all over the phone. So you can call them from your home, your office. But this is where the miracle comes in. They take about 5% of your bill every month, and they give it back to conservative causes that are fighting for our First and our Second Amendment rights. They're fighting for the rights of unborn children. They also give amazing donations to our men and women in uniform, our veterans, and our fallen families to help provide when they are in need. That is why I love Patriot Mobile. I made the switch, and I travel all the time, and I get incredible coverage. Why? Because they're on all three major U.S. networks. So if you've got great service right now, you're going to get the same exact coverage or even better coverage with Patriot Mobile. And switching, like I said, is hassle-free. So call them, and I'm going to give you a free month of service as well. PatriotMobile.com/verdict's the website. All right, that's PatriotMobile.com/verdict. Make a difference to every call that you make, whether every text you send. You can call them as well, 972-PATRIOT. That's 972-PATRIOT. Use the promo code VERDICT. You're going to get a free month of service. Switch today and make a difference for as long as you're going to have cell phone service. Plus, you're going to save money. 972-PATRIOT or PatriotMobile.com/verdict. All right, so let's start with this. I actually am shocked by this, Senator. When I saw this come out, I'm like, did Tim Kaine really say that constitutional rights come from government, not God? And that is exactly what he said. It wasn't a joke on the internet.
Yeah, and let me set the stage. This was a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing this week, and it was a confirmation hearing for a number of nominees. And the way hearings work in the Senate is often you have multiple hearings simultaneously. And so that day I had a Senate Foreign Relations hearing. I had a Commerce Committee hearing that I was chairing and conducting, and then I also had a Judiciary Committee hearing. And so you have to go from hearing to hearing. So you're walking in and out of each of the hearings trying to make it to all of them. And so I was just walking into the Foreign Relations Committee hearing, and Tim Kaine happened to be questioning and speaking. And I was getting ready to speak myself, so I sat down. And one of the Trump administration nominees to the State Department had included in his testimony the observation that our rights come from God and not from government. And Tim Kaine took offense to this, and he just teed off on it. And I sat there dumbfounded listening to him, and then I responded. So I'm going to play first what Tim Kaine said, and then I'm going to play my response that I said afterwards. Here, give a listen.
The notion that rights don't come from laws and don't come from the government, but come from the creator, that's what the Iranian government believes. It's a theocratic regime that bases its rule on Shia law and targets Sunnis, Baha'is, Jews, Christians, and other religious minorities. And they do it because they believe that they understand what natural rights are from their creator. So the statement that our rights do not come from our laws or our governments is extremely troubling. I think the motto over the Supreme Court is equal justice under law. The oath that you and I take, pledge to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, not arbitrarily defined natural rights.
Mr. Barnes, I'd actually like to go back to the exchange you had with Senator Kaine, and I wish Senator Kaine was still here. Senator Kaine and I were elected together 13 years ago. He is a friend. I would actually encourage observers to go back and listen to what Senator Kaine said, because I have to say I think was disturbing and showed much of where today's Democrat Party has gone wrong. So Senator Kaine said in this hearing that he found it a radical and dangerous notion that you would say our rights came from God and not from government. I just walked into the hearing as he was saying that, and I almost fell out of my chair because that radical and dangerous notion, in his words, is literally the founding principle upon which the United States of America was created. And if you do not believe me, and you made reference to this, Mr. Barnes, then you can believe perhaps the most prominent Virginian to ever serve, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator, not by government, not by the Democratic National Committee, but by God, with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." I have to say it is stunning to me that the principle that God has given us natural rights is now deemed by Democrats some radical and dangerous notion. Mr. Jefferson was right when he wrote those words. Government exists to protect those rights, but slavery was not okay when U.S. law allowed it. It was wrong then, it is wrong now, it is always wrong.
So let's break this down. This seems to be where the Democratic Party, not where it's going. This is where it is at its core right now.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Tim Kaine is not some fringe character in the Democrat Party. Tim Kaine, as you know, was Hillary Clinton's vice presidential nominee. He came very close to being vice president of the United States. Tim Kaine has been in the Senate for 13 years. He was elected to the Senate the same time I was. Tim is not a dumb man. He's very smart. He's a lawyer. He's a serious guy. He's a careful thinker. He knows what's in the Declaration of Independence. He just doesn't agree with it. And what troubled me about this, I actually had an entirely different line of questioning that I was planning to get into at the hearing, and I just walked in and heard him saying this. And what troubled me was just how casually he said, look, the basic ideas that were the foundation of America, those ideas are radical, they're extreme. They are the ideas of Iran. That's what he argued, that if you believe our rights come from God, you are a theocratic mullah in Iran. I want to go back. I want to read the first paragraph and a half of the Declaration of Independence. You know, next summer, next July 4th, will be the 250th anniversary of the United States. So it was 250 years ago next summer that the Declaration was signed on July 4th, 1776. Here's how it begins. In unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect of the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then I want you to listen to the next sentence, because it explains why Tim Kaine is fundamentally wrong in the relationship between rights that come from God and the role of government. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Now that's the right relationship, which is that government is not the source of the rights. God is the source of the rights. It is God who has given you and me and everyone listening to this a right to life. It is God who has given us a right to liberty. It is God who has given us a right to the pursuit of happiness. Historically, and if you go back to some of the great English thinkers, people like John Locke, the three standard natural rights that people were discussed having were life, liberty, and property. And Jefferson did not include property in the Declaration because he did not want to get into the debate on slavery. And so in place of property, he put in pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness in many ways is just an aspect of liberty. That is part of liberty, is the pursuit of happiness. But the relationship that is important, and every one of our founding fathers knew this. Thomas Jefferson knew this. George Washington knew this. James Madison knew this. Ben Franklin knew this. They understood, look, God has given us these rights. Now, Tim is saying, well, no, it's government who gives us his rights. That's backwards, as the Declaration says, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That means the purpose of government is to protect those rights. Do you need government to protect our rights? Absolutely. And actually, the point I made in the debate with Tim Kaine, listen, slavery was wrong. It was immoral, even for the 100+ years that it was legal here. The fact that our laws allowed slavery didn't make it suddenly moral and just and okay. It was a violation of human rights. It was a violation of human rights as the Declaration promised. All men are created equal. When you had African Americans that could be held as slaves, our country was not living up to that promise, and so we fought a bloody civil war. 600,000 Americans died to end the scourge of slavery, and then we amended the Constitution to explicitly end slavery. But slavery was not magically okay before the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And that's a point that Tim Kaine is really representing well today's Democrat Party, because the entire party rejects that. And I'll tell you why they reject that. Because if rights don't come from God, if they come from government, then government can take them away. The Declaration refers to these rights as unalienable. Unalienable means they can't be taken away. The Democrats believe your rights are entirely alienable, that the only God is government, and government can give, government can take away. That's the fundamental debate, and it's a debate right at the heart, I think, of where today's Democrat Party has gone off the rails.
Yeah, final question on this, because I do believe we're also witnessing a public disdain for people of faith coming from the Democratic Party. we've seen the undertones of that, but now it just seems to be at the forefront, that it's almost like they mock and roll their eyes at people of faith. We've seen this certainly with the debates and the conversations over people that are Jewish and people of faith in Israel. And now this has become mainstream. How dangerous is that?
Look, it is very dangerous. The Democrat Party position often seems to be people of faith need not apply. If you're a Christian, the Democrats don't want you. If you're Jewish, the Democrats don't want you. If you're Catholic, the Democrats don't want you. If you believe your faith, if you worship, if you are faithful, and it matters to you, the Democrats have said that is not welcome. And you know, it wasn't too long ago when there was a real bipartisan commitment to religious liberty. You know, you go back to the 1990s, 1993, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act passed Congress, protecting the religious liberty of every American.
Senator, I want to ask you one other question about this bigger issue with Tim Kaine. There have been some religious leaders, thank goodness, that have actually stood up to him. Some of the headlines, the Federalist had one that said, Tim Kaine thinks you're a terrorist if you believe rights come from God. The Christian Post said Ted Cruz torches Tim Kaine for describing God-given rights as very, very troubling. And there's some religious leaders that have also gotten in to talk about this as well. That's a good sign.
Yeah, one of the most thoughtful responses to what Tim Kaine said came from Bishop Robert Barron, who is the bishop of the Diocese of Winona Rochester in Minnesota. And I want you to listen to what the bishop had to say, because I think this is very thoughtful and accurate.
Hey everybody, it's Bishop Barron. I just feel obligated to speak out against something that I came across today, and I just found it so outrageous and really so dangerous to our democracy. It was Senator Tim Kaine at I think it was a Senate confirmation hearing, and he was actively contesting the view that our rights come from God and not from the government. And he said it's very dangerous if you claim that our rights don't come from laws and from government. Well, what struck me was he's a senator from Virginia. Virginia was a state of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, both of whom took it as fundamental to our democracy that our rights don't come from the government, they come from God. So we know the familiar words of Jefferson, right? That we are created equal, created by God. We're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You see, so basic to Jefferson was the fact that rights come first. They're not invented by the government. Rather, government exists, and remember this language from the prologue of the Declaration, to secure these rights. It doesn't invent them, doesn't ground them. It secures them, it recognizes them as objectively coming from God, and then its whole purpose is to secure them, to serve them. Think too of that familiar word from Jefferson, inalienable. These rights are inalienable. Now why? Because they come not from the government, but from God. If the government creates our rights, it can take them away. If the government is responsible for our rights, well, then it can change them. You think this never happens, you don't know much about the history of the 20th century. Look at the great totalitarian systems of the 20th century that followed from the denial of God and denial of rights coming from God, and so those rights became eminently alienable whenever it served the purposes of the government. It just strikes me as extraordinary that a major American politician wouldn't understand this really elemental part of our system. God help us. I mean that literally. God help us if we say our rights are coming to us from the government. That gives the government, indeed, godlike power. We are, and this is not pious boilerplate, it's basic democracy. We are a nation under God. Lincoln says, the Gettysburg Address, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. Again, that's not just pious decoration. That's a very important political statement. We are a government that recognizes the objective rights that come from outside of government. Government exists to serve them and to secure them. Well, the fact that this rhetoric, and it's popped up elsewhere too in recent years, I spoke out against it a little while ago, is troubling. Because it's a fruit, I would say, of the increasing marginalization and privatization of religion, if not outright hostility to it. But see, everybody, religion is elemental. It's basic to our democracy. So I'm speaking out against this statement I think is really dangerous, both as a Catholic bishop and as a proud American who's very happy to follow Thomas Jefferson.
I love what he said there. He says, as a American as well, like, you need to understand this is how our country was founded. Let's not rewrite history and act like this isn't what we are.
I think that's exactly right. And this is something that everyone ought to come together and say, look, these are the basic principles America was founded upon, and particularly as we move into next year, celebrating our nation's 250th anniversary, it's important that people understand them. And I wish that the Democrat Party would get back to them, because the idea, you look at the hat that worn by Trump supporters, "Make America Great Again." I got to say, it infuriates so many Democrats, the idea that America was ever great. I mean, they're offended by that, and this is why America was great, because we were founded on principles that are true, that our rights are derived from our Creator, that our government exists to protect those fundamental rights. That is the genius idea right at the beginning of the American experiment that put us on this journey to be the shining city on a hill that we are.
Yeah, great point. I want to also move on to the other story that is one that is not getting a lot of coverage, and it's really important. It's why I love doing this show with you. The Sinaloa Cartel is now, in essence, in every single major city in America. They have set up a massive network. They are making billions and billions of dollars poisoning and killing Americans. Human trafficking, sex trafficking, child trafficking, the list goes on and on. Anything that's illegal, they've got their tentacles in it. And you may think that you're far away from the border, so this isn't actually in your city or your big city or your area of the country. Great example of that is New England. If you're in New England listening to us right now, you're probably thinking, it's not near as bad as like where we are in Houston at the moment. Well, guess what? You'd be wrong. 171 Sinaloa cartel members were arrested in New England, the DEA has now announced.
That was in a single week. In a single week, 171 Sinaloa cartel members arrested in Boston. The arrest also led to the seizure of more than 22,000 counterfeit pills, fentanyl powder, and packaging branded with the Sinaloa cartel logo. And the DEA agent in charge for the New England Field Division said the Sinaloa cartel is, quote, public enemy number one in New England. That's what the Democrats' open border policies have done. And listen to a local news story covering this arrest of 171 Sinaloa cartel members in Boston. Give a listen.
Yeah, and by the way, ask yourself this question, America. Why did you not hear about this on the national news? This is Boston 25 News covering it there.
The Federal Drug Enforcement Administration says a week-long cartel crackdown led to nearly 200 arrests just in New England. The DEA says they were all members of the Sinaloa Cartel, the largest drug cartel in the world. 25 Investigates went one-on-one with the DEA special agent in charge about their recent operation. He says the vast Sinaloa network has deep roots in New England.
They're our public enemy number one.
Jared Forget, the special agent in charge of DEA's New England Field Division, says last week the DEA set out to arrest as many members of the Mexico-based Sinaloa cartel as possible. New England saw the highest number of regional arrests at 171, with 49 in Massachusetts, 33 in New Hampshire. Connecticut saw the most at 64.
Do you think people would be surprised to learn how many members of that cartel are operating probably in plain sight in their communities?
Sure. So Sinaloa cartel in every single state across America, more than 40 countries around the world, and obviously they're in every state throughout New England.
What's their number one product they push? Is it the pills?
So we see fentanyl powder and we see counterfeit pills that are made to look like legitimate pills, notably M30s.
M30 pills are counterfeit oxycodone. But Forget says they're also increasingly seeing counterfeit stimulant pills made to look like Adderall. Forget showed us some of the more than 22,000 pills and other drugs seized during the operation, like signature purple fentanyl. and some drug packaging even displaying the Sinaloa cartel stamp.
I'm a DEA agent. I cannot tell the difference between a fake one and a real one. So we need to remind parents, schools, caregivers, everybody in the community, have those conversations with each other, have them with your kids.
Forget says the cartel targets unsuspecting young people online through common social media apps. Many have no idea they're buying potentially deadly counterfeit pills.
171 arrests throughout New England. Does that make a dent?
We're the DEA. We're not going after low-level retail drug traffickers. We are going after drug trafficking organizations, the networks.
How do you disrupt that, something that is so large, so vast, and seemingly so powerful?
Right. It's an ongoing battle, one that we can't afford to give up, right? It's the Sinaloa cartel is a threat to public safety, our public health, and our national security as a country.
This year, the Centers for Disease Control reported while drug overdose deaths are declining, overdose is the leading cause of death for young people ages 18 to 45.
Senator, you hear that report. It should be national news. It's not. Thank goodness we're doing the show to make it national. But this is concerning because it's not just in New England. This is in every major city in America. They've set up shop.
Well, CNN won't cover it. MSNBC won't but cover it. I'm glad the local news covered it, and it is critically important. The cartels, public enemy number one in New England, brought to you by the Democrats, is the Sinaloa cartel. And, it was striking what they were arrested with. They were arrested with among other things, counterfeit pills like Adderall. And those are designed to be sold to your kids. Ben, you and I are both parents. I will tell you it is terrifying being the parents of young kids today. Your kids are younger than mine, Ben. My girls are teenagers. And I think back when you and I were teenagers, you'd go out to party. There may be some kids in high school. They might be drinking. Maybe someone would smoke some marijuana. But the odds were that you were not going to die going to a party when you and I were kids. What is terrifying now is that kids go to a party and someone says, "Here, hey, try a pill. It's an Adderall. It's a Ritalin. It's something they think is fairly innocuous." And the kid takes one pill, and it is a counterfeit pill that has fentanyl, and the child drops dead. And that is happening at a scale that is truly terrifying. In 2023, more than 100,000 Americans died of overdoses. 70% of those were fentanyl. And overdose is the wrong word for those. Those are poisonings because, you think of an overdose. If you have a junkie on the street who's shooting up heroin, he shoots up a little bit too much heroin. That's a tragedy, but there are a series of decisions that put the person in that situation. This circumstance is much more frightening because it can be one tiny mistaken decision made by a 14-year-old that ends that child's life, and that is the result. Open borders are endangering our families in a very fundamental way.
It's an epidemic, and what's interesting is when you do research on this, Senator, one of the things that's the most shocking about it is a lot of police forces are actually running out of their Narcan, which is what you can give to try to save someone's life when they overdose. Their yearly supply, they're eating through it in 2 to 3 months into the year, and they're having to go to their city council and their board of aldermen, their county commissioners, depending on what type of government they have, and they're having to beg them for more money because they're running through the budget for what they need to save people's lives. That's how big of an epidemic this has become. And again, it's the number one killer of young people in this country. That is something that needs to be said over and over again, and it's something that we must stop.
Well, and police officers and first responders, they often wear gloves. They're very frightened because if they inadvertently touch fentanyl, a tiny amount can kill them. The level that this is deadly is truly unprecedented. And I'll say I want to share an illustration that a DEA agent told me a number of years ago, which we were sitting and doing a round table with a DEA agent and with a mom who had lost her child to fentanyl poisoning. And here's what the DEA agent did is he handed out everyone Sweet and Low packets of the sweetener you put in your tea or coffee. And he said, "Okay, tear open the Sweet and Low packet." And he said, "Empty all the Sweet and Low onto the table." So we all did that. He then said, "Stick your pinky, your little finger, into the empty packet." So we did that. And they said, pull it out. And you pull it out, you have a handful of tiny little grains of sweet and low that are on your finger. And he said, that is enough fentanyl to kill you. And it's a very effective illustration. I'll tell you, with both of our teenage girls, I sat them down in the kitchen. I handed them packets of sweet and low. And I had them do exactly that illustration. And if you are a parent, if you are a grandparent, have this conversation with your kids or your grandkids. Because, look, hopefully your kids will not make catastrophically wrong decisions. But in this circumstance, one small decision that seems easy, hey, it's a friend of theirs that has, hey, try this pill, we're all at a party, and they don't think they are risking their lives. I don't know a parent who is not terrified about the risks that their kids will make one wrong choice and it will cost them their entire life.
Yeah, it is. It really is scary. There's no doubt about it. And this is part of the reason why I think the president is also, as you wrap up this last week, going after these drug cartels and saying we're going to use the full force of our government to go after them since we've declared them terrorist organizations because they're killing Americans.
Look, obviously the U.S. military took out a Tren de Aragua narco-terrorist boat off the shores of Venezuela just this past week. As you know, last week I was in Mexico meeting with senior government officials in Mexico and making clear to them the United States is going after these cartels, and we're going to do so either with or without you. Yet, listening to the story of the 171 Sinaloa cartel members arrested in New England reminded me of the MS-13 cartel member that I spoke with down in El Salvador. I went to the CICOT, the maximum security terrorist prison. And if you didn't listen to our podcast last week, let me encourage every one of you, go back and listen to last week's podcast where I take you inside this prison, this maximum security prison built for 40,000 gang members, mass murderers, and terrorists. And I met with one MS-13 gang member who'd lived in Texas many years. He spoke perfectly fluent English. He became an MS-13 member when he was 13 years old, living in Falls Church, Virginia. That's the level at which these gangs have penetrated our society. And by the way, the only way you become a member of MS-13 is you have to murder someone. So at age 13, he murdered someone to become a member of this gang. When I asked him why he did it, he said all of his friends were doing the same thing, that he was hanging out with other 13-year-olds who were joining the same gang. And this is now a 42-year-old man who's spending the rest of his life in a maximum security prison because of the multiple murders he committed. That is not in Colombia. That's not deep in Mexico City. That was Falls Church, Virginia, and later he moved to Dallas, Texas. We've heard New England. This is public enemy number one. You and I and our families, we want the border secured, and I'm grateful that we have a president and commander-in-chief who says we are going to stop the human trafficking, we're going to stop the drug trafficking, we are securing the border. That's an incredible success, and it's incredibly important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And also Reuters is now reporting, and this is just showing, I think, the president's commitment to fighting these narco-terrorists. Reuters is now saying the U.S. is deploying stealth fighter jets to the Caribbean for drug fight as the tensions with Venezuela continue to rise. They're saying, Axios is saying that 10 F-35 jets are being dispatched also to Puerto Rico to support the drug war there. And this is on top of the...
And Ben, when I was down at the Panama Canal, I actually saw the USS Lake Erie that was transiting from the Pacific to the Caribbean specifically to participate in the war on drugs. This is a missile ship with enormous capacity. I don't know if this was the particular ship that took out the Tren de Aragua, but I went and toured the ship, met many of the sailors on board. We are moving major assets to take on the cartels and to defeat the cartels.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to keep covering this. So download Verdict with Ted Cruz wherever you get your podcasts. Don't miss a single episode. And the Senator and I will see you back here on this radio station next week.